The attitude for the Huawei P30 phones really seems to be, let's get what we did last year and take each individual feature to the next level. So if this is the Huawei P30 Pro, then you're looking at the most exciting kind of upgrade. First off, a basic overview. If you look carefully at some of the case leaks, you'll be able to peek what looks like a headphone jack, and some publications have inferred from this that the feature will make a return. Now I thought this would be super unusual. It would be the equivalent of Huawei admitting that they made a mistake last year. So to find out, I tried ordering one of the cases, and it arrived. So this is a Huawei P30 Pro case. So if we start by placing it over last year's P20 Pro, a few things become clear. It's a little tight around the sides, so you can tell that in terms of body, the P30 Pro will be a similar size and maybe even a little slimmer. Also, there is a massive amount of room around the camera. If we shifted the flash module to where it'll probably go on the right hand side, then that leaves room for 4 cameras and a wider camera module on the P30 Pro. Now, if we flip to the top, you can see that we have 2 sizable holes on the case. The larger one actually big enough to fit a 3.5mm jack through, which doesn't make my job easier, but my best guess would be that these are for an IR blaster and a microphone, kind of like we saw on the P20 Pro, which would imply no headphone jack. There's no sign of a fingerprint scanner either, indicating that the in-screen scanner from the Mate 20 Pro will make a return here. Okay, so cameras. The standard Huawei P30 looks like it's taken on what the Pro model could do last year. According to Evan Blass, it should have a triple camera with a 40 megapixel resolution and 5 times lossless zoom. That sounds familiar. At the same time, while the P30 will be essentially competing with last year's flagships, it is the P30 Pro that will be stepping forward, with 4 cameras on the back. We don't know the exact formation, but looking at the case gives us a good idea. On top of the 3 that we've already seen on the Mate 20 Pro, this 4th one could be either a monochrome sensor, which can add a degree of sharpness to the end photo, or a 3D camera, which could do things like make a person seem taller or slimmer in real time. The P series is also traditionally where Huawei massively bolsters the main camera, so you can also expect a better sensor capable of processing more light, and quite possibly a wider aperture, which can further reduce noise in the dark, and as a side benefit, create even more bokeh in your photos. Portrait mode on Huawei phones has always been a bit artificial looking though, so I do hope that instead of just throwing a whole load of new stuff onto this phone, the company also works on refining what's there. The European boss, Walter G, has also talked about 10 times optical zoom on their future devices. But to be honest, it might make more sense for them to save that for the Mate 30 Pro later on in the year, because let's face it, the P30 kind of already has enough going on right now. One thing it would do though is push that DxOMark camera score higher. So if it turns out that the P30 Pro wasn't performing as well as Huawei hoped, then they could have decided to fast track this 10 times zoom to give the score a boost. Okay, what about the display? Huawei have most likely had a bit of a dilemma with this one. They've got the option to go for the cheaper water drop notch, or they could go for the more modern looking punch hole camera. Or the third option would be to take advantage of the full size notch and incorporate the 3D face scanning features we saw on the Mate 20 Pro. It's pretty clear from the case renders that these companies aren't too sure what the answer is either. Some of them resemble last year's handsets, while others look more like something new. Oh yeah, and we're pretty sure that the P30 Pro is going to take the curved display that we saw on last year's Mate 20 Pro, which, mind you, I don't completely love. That screen isn't entirely responsive around the curved area, and every now and again it does result in a little bit of fiddling. So what about the power? If the past is anything to go by, the P30 Pro is going to be powered by 6 or 8 gigs of RAM and the Kirin 980 chip. And it's a bit of a hot topic, because on one hand, this chip is beaten in a lot of areas by the Snapdragon 855, but then on the other hand, because Huawei would then be building both the hardware and a lot of the software, they can build that software to take advantage of the dual AI cores on this chip. Also, don't get me wrong, this chip is still very fast and very responsive, and you'll only really notice a slight performance disparity with high-level 3D gaming and load times. MUI 9.1. You might not be keeping up to date with Huawei's MUI update cycle, but long story short, alongside the P30 Pro, they're probably almost definitely going to drop MIUI 9.1. And considering that the upgrade from MIUI 8 to 8.1 brought massive features like night mode, slow motion, and face unlocking, expect big features this time too, as well as a much needed facelift. So there we have it. What do you guys think? Do you think this P30 Pro case is legit? And if so, are you excited about the phone? Let me know in the comments down below. As always, my name is Aaron, this is Mr. Who's the Boss, and I'll catch you in the next one.